So I'll help you, you know, according to the agenda.
Okay.
You,
Oh, it's not going up. So bear with it because this is should be good. So just raise your hand. If it's not going through.
are going to request to talk. It's gonna show up on here. Press the button.
Yeah.
See the red one.
Yeah.
Oh, I can help you with this. Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, that's me. Yep.
Good. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call to meeting the June 28th meeting of PSTA Board of Directors. Please all rise for the pledge. And Commissioner Schulman, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. I'm Joe Barkley. Currently, I'm Secretary Treasurer of the PSTA Board. Chair Darden Rice and Commissioner Lisa Wheeler-Bowman have a meeting at the City of St. Petersburg, and they'll be along shortly. Vice Chair Janet Long is out of town, so I will chair the meeting until Commissioner Rice gets here. We do have a quorum, and I want to thank everybody for coming to the meeting this morning. We will have an opportunity to hear from everyone who wishes to speak. Now is the opportunity for public comment on consent agenda items or for any topic not on today's agenda. For those who would like to speak about any particular item on the action items, we will give you an opportunity to do that at the time when that particular item is discussed. Please fill out a green card and give it to Clarissa in the front. Do we have any cards? Okay. I have one card here. Mitchell McNeely, would you come up, please? Thank you, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, it's Mitchell McNeely. Come in on the Route 11.
Speak into the mic, sir, please.
It's Mitchell McNeely. Come in on the Route 11 in the 444. It's been about a year since the 11 been put into Crystal Lake. And I live on the south side of St. Pete up on 42nd Avenue and 37th Street. But they said they was going to change that and maybe change it and put it back into Crystal Lake, the 444. Because the 11 running south now, it's not making a connection with the 20. It's running 10 to 15 minutes behind at times. And people who live on the Route 20, it's not being able to connect with that, so they have to wait an extra hour. The people in Crystal Lake, they're not getting to where they want to go, and that's down the Walmart, the Super Walmart, down on Pinellas Park. So they have to catch 2 different buses. When the 444 went into there, they were satisfied. Also, not too many people ride the bus in Crystal Lake. They go in there early in the morning on their one trip, and they go back in there later on. So the bus only actually need to go in there about twice a day. That's how the 444 did. But the 11 going in there every trip, even on Saturdays and Sundays. It serves mainland, which only carry about 1, maybe 2 people a day. The 444 still go down to mainland, but where you was making your money at was at Crystal Lake. Why would you take a bus out of Crystal Lake that made a whole lot of money, like the 444, and keep it in mainland? Does money play a part there? You're serving $1 million neighborhood, only carry about 1 person, and you're serving somebody, about 10 people, who really need the bus. Why is it backwards like that? Also, you're messing up another set of people on the south side where you carry about 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 people a day and messing them up. I know you like money because you're getting $150,000 on ARG where the 74 go back in there. And it'll only carry about 5 or 6 people also. And they got vans that pick them up during the day also. So the 74 going back there for 102nd Avenue, picking up 1 or 2 people. So that's about it on that part. So that's stupid to go back in there every trip. So I can see twice a day maybe going back in there on 102nd Avenue for the ARG. So that's stupid to go back there every trip. Also, the 34 coming south. Although y'all changed it a little bit, but it still run late, sometimes even on Saturdays and Sundays, especially Sunday, still screwed up. But mainly the 11 and the 444, those are the ones I'm worried about the most, especially during the week. So I think you have to fix that one. And I think your person that I mentioned, ever since it's been changed like that, y'all still talking about y'all gonna fix it. One of your guys was at Grand Central the other day,
Sir.
and he said he was gonna do it.
Sir, your time is up. We will check into that, and we will have one of our people talk with you right behind you.
Oh, y'all done said that every time I done came here.
Thank
Y'all
you.
ain't did
Thank
that
you, sir.
yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitchell.
Anyone else? Okay, then let's move along to our first presentation. Brad Miller is going to talk to us about the state legislative update.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to introduce our State Legislative Affairs team of RSA Consulting, Mr. Ron Pierce and Natalie King. PSTA had a bit of a historic success this past legislative session that just completed since our last meeting by having a project included in the budget, which I think, at least during my time here at PSTA, is the first time we've had other legislative successes, but not a line item approved in the state budget. So hats off to our RSA folks for getting that done. And Ron will kind of give a summary of our successes in Tallahassee this past year.
Brad, Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning. Obviously, every legislative session is different. This year we had a regular session and a special session, but I'm proud to report to you, we had 3 agenda items I want to walk you through. I also want to walk you through 2 other items, 2 other pieces of legislation that is going to impact PSTA in the future. We had 3 agenda items, as you all know, last year that were directly related to our agenda in Tallahassee. Number 1 was the Memorial Causeway Bridge expansion. We asked the legislature for $1 million for PD&E. I'm proud to report to you that was included as a line item in the state budget. Thank you to the efforts of Senator Latvala and the entire Pinellas County legislative delegation. But really hats off to Senator Latvala for helping spearhead this and make it happen and making sure that it was not vetoed. A lot of times these type of line items are, well, they're not a part of the work plan, are vetoed by the governor. And we met with the governor's office, and Senator Latvala also communicated to the governor that this was important to include because having the updated PD&E would allow us to make sure that moving forward, to hopefully get this included as a part of the DOT work plan. Staff is already working. I can tell you that Brad and Cassandra and the entire team are already having conversations with DOT from a PD&E standpoint, and specifically working on focusing on the design aspect of that to kind of expedite that process to make sure that we can get that included as a future MPO plan, and more importantly, as a part of the DOT work plan in the future to fund the full expansion of the Memorial Causeway Bridge. 2 other items I'll quickly run through. Number 1 was the express bus service from TIE over to Clearwater Beach. That was a project we've talked about for the last couple of years. That was not funded mainly because I think there was some questions from some key legislators on some ridership numbers. They were already going to fund one other line item in the budget. So I think they had some issues on ridership, and they also wanted to talk about, from an operations standpoint, they were a little bit leery on focusing on using non-recurring revenue, focusing on operations for a recurring item. So we're going to come back next year and continue to have the discussion with our delegation and members in Tallahassee about that direct route. The other item that we focused on was funding for transportation disadvantage. I know it's important to many members of this board. I know that Commissioner Johnson has spent a lot of time and efforts on that. Very quickly, 2016, 2017, the legislature was instructed basically to go out and come up with a study, working with the Transportation Disadvantage Commission and also working with Qatar. Cutter came back with recommendations last year that was presented to the legislature for this session. They came up with 4 recommendations that the Commission on Transportation Disadvantage pushed forward. The 4 kind of options they looked at, really the one they ended up putting into the budget has very little impact on PSTA. The way they put it into the budget, they put it in the budget as proviso language, which means it's only a one-time fix. They're going to have to probably come back next year and continue to look at that formula specifically, how it's going to impact Pinellas County. There's really 3 counties that are part of this discussion. Pinellas County, Miami-Dade County, and Duval County were the kind of the 3 large counties that are leading the efforts on looking at potentially a new formula and how that's going to work. This year in the upcoming budget, there was additional language included to continue to look at the funding formula moving forward, and it's going to be put in through the Agency for Persons with Disability. So it's a little bit different place where they put it this year. I think the reason they did that is Senator Renee Garcia from Miami, who chairs the Children and Families Committee in the Florida Senate, is somebody that very much cares about this issue, and I think wanted to have his committee have the jurisdiction of what the new formula may look like next year. So that's going to be something we continue to focus on and making sure that we have a voice in that process. The one thing I am proud to report is when APD is putting together a new work group, kind of a study group, to look at the formula moving forward, PSTA will be included in that. We actually have a specific seat at the table to make sure that PSTA will be included to have a voice in that discussion. The other thing that you've read a lot about is T-BARTA. And so there was legislation that was introduced this year in Tallahassee that basically went into to revamp the board of directors and reorganize the board from 15 members down to 13 members. There used to be 7 counties that were included as a part of it. Sarasota County and Citrus County are no longer included. The counties that now make up the board of directors for T-BARTA are Manatee, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Pasco, and Hernando. They also still include the mayor of St. Petersburg, the mayor of the city of Tampa, 4 gubernatorial appointments, which is the way that it used to be. One thing that is new, there's a new appointment to have somebody from HART and from PSTA to be on the board of directors. And all new appointments are due 45 days after July 1st, so by August 15th, all appointments are due at that point. And I think you, as a board, you're going to discuss who your appointee will be at your next board meeting. From a T-BARTA standpoint, obviously reorganizing the board's the first step in that discussion. The other thing, the legislation that passed this year, which again was sponsored by Senator Latvala, so having somebody from our backyard sponsor that and make sure that we were kind of protected, I think was very important. Number one, they changed the name. It used to be the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transportation Authority. They changed transportation to transit. They really want to have more of a transit focus moving forward. And then the other thing that was included was they have to develop and adopt a regional transit plan. What's good about that is, as they're talking about a regional transit plan, whatever plans they come up with, HART and PSTA, the 2 largest transit authorities in the region, are going to have to be a part of those discussions. So I think having a seat on the board, I think, will be critical to the success of that plan moving forward. The last point I'll make about T-BARTA was there was a lot of discussion from members in Tallahassee about reorganizing the board is the first step, and then coming up with that regional transit plan is going to look like. But then there was a lot of discussion about would rail projects be included or not be included in future projects. And it was very important to Senator Brandis to include that if rail projects were going to be included and state dollars were going to be spent, that would require state approval for any type of dollars that are going to be spent on rail projects moving forward. The last piece of legislation I'll bring to your attention is Uber. There was statewide legislation passed this year for Uber that dealt with statewide regulations, really kind of focusing on insurance and background checks. The important thing there for you all to know as board members is it does not impact in any way our current agreement or any type of future agreements we would have with Uber moving forward. Obviously, it's a critical partnership we've had with Uber, and we wanted to make sure that there was actually some things that were introduced during the session that would have potentially impacted some of our agreements, and working with Brad and staff, we'd make sure that those amendments were not included. So we just got home from special session, within the last month, and regular session, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, is right around the corner. Committee weeks start in September. The 2018 session's early session will start in January. We're actually in the process, we had a meeting with staff yesterday. Your legislative committee is going to meet next month and start having a discussion about your 2018 agenda, and hopefully bring something back to you as a board sometime in August or September to have a discussion about. But again, the 2018 session, there'll be 5 committee weeks from September to December, and then there'll be regular session will start in January. So I'll pause there. Do you have any questions or comments, not only on anything that I presented, but any other issues that you may have questions about leading into anything that could impact PSTA?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pierce. Do we have it? Yes. Commissioner Johnson.
The homestead exemption. Do you want to comment on that?
And I know you're going to discuss it as a board a little bit later on during your budget update. So the Florida legislature did include a constitutional amendment for an additional homestead exemption. The way it's going to be structured is the additional homestead exemption would be for the value of the property from $100,000 to $125,000. That obviously would have an impact on local governments. It would also have a potential impact on PSTA. A couple of things, and I'm glad you asked, that you all need to understand is, A, it's just a proposed constitutional amendment. It has to be passed by the voters, but 60% plus of the voters during November of 2018. It would not go into effect until mid-2019, so it doesn't impact necessarily the budget you're getting ready to discuss. It would definitely impact future budgets, but that is something for you all to consider, that it is proposed. It is going to be on the ballot in 2018. If it does pass, it would definitely have an impact on PSTA's budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Appreciate it.
No. Thanks again to both Ron and Natalie and the PSTA Legislative Committee chaired by Commissioner Long with Commissioner Justice, Mayor Beavis, Lisa Wheeler Bowman, and Patty Johnson on the committee. We made some good trips that I think were effective. We are really, as Ron said, one of the groups across the states really engaged in this transportation disadvantage discussion to try to, really just raise awareness of the growing demand for transportation for low-income folks in our urban areas, and that's starting to make some progress. And then, thanks, of course, to Senator Latvala for pushing that project forward to get an expressway to get to the beach. That'll be a good project moving forward. That we, like Ron said, really the DOT is going to kind of take the lead on it, but it'll greatly benefit public transit. So,
Great.
thanks again, and we'll see you very soon.
Very good. Thank you.
And next month, we will have our friends from our federal government affairs team to give you an update, come with an update on what's going on in Washington, D.C., which we don't ever hear about.
All right. Next, we'd like to recognize a retiring employee, Mr. Walt Lentz, and
No.
okay, Debbie Woodward and Fred Miller.
Good morning, Board. My name is Deborah Woodward. I'm the Director of Information Technology here at PSTA, and I am here to recognize a retiring employee, Walt Lenz. Walt started at PSTA in April of 1990 as a part-time bus operator. During the interview for the position, the question of how do you see yourself in the future at PSTA, his answer was simply, drive a bus. 3 years later, Walt was selected for the position of Transportation Supervisor. During this time with PSTA, Walt has received numerous promotions to where he is today as Senior IT Technology Director. Walt has been responsible for many technologies you now see on our buses, including real-time bus information. Walt is also a key person in the Regional Fare Collection Project, which includes our Flamingo app. Walt is originally from Pittsburgh, PA, moved to Florida in the spring of 1989. He has a daughter that he is very close to, who recently gave him 2 twin grandbabies. Boys, of course. When asked what he's going to do once he retires, Walt's single answer is retire. Let's all wish Walt a happy retirement after 27 years at PSTA. Thank you.
There's your fancy. Yeah.
All right, we'll get it on here. And 3, 2, 1, big smiles. Congratulations.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, was I just saying?
Yeah, I have about a 15-minute speech. No, thank you. I'm overwhelmed and appreciate this, board members, Brad, Debbie, and coworkers and friends. Yeah, 27 and a half years, and it all comes down to a few more hours, but it's been an exciting adventure. I envy you who's going to stay behind. Exciting times are coming. I will be keeping my ear to the road, and I'll be hearing it. But I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for this recognition. Peace and party on.
Well, first, just a few, comment about Walt. You know, when I first got here in 2011, I had little one-on-ones with every employee at PSTA just to mainly meet them. And the first thing that Walt said, he said, you know, we took a little poll of the candidates for the job, Brad, and I didn't vote for you. That was the first thing he said. And it's like, okay. But ever since that great start, he has really just impressed me. I have worked, you know, in a number of transit systems around the country, and there is no transit system that I've ever worked for, and there's very few out there that have successfully implemented the technologies that Walt is really responsible for. The real-time system that is the backbone of our whole operations is his baby, besides his new grandbabies, and now the Flamingo app, the cameras. He is very direct. He's very direct with vendors, technology. I don't know if there's any in the room, but he is very tough on them, and he has really been a great person for PSTA, much more advanced than a lot of other systems. So we knew, we had some advance warning that Walt was going to retire, and so we're already in the process of replacing or coming up with a new plan for his position. What we didn't really have as much notice about was the second retiree, his boss, Miss Deborah Woodward, who just announced on Friday that she is retiring. She's retiring for different reasons. She is headed back to Wisconsin to take care of her parents, or needing to get back to Wisconsin very quickly to take care of her parents. Deborah is the first director of IT that PSTA had. She's been here for 14 years. And when she came on, before that, I've learned that the IT function was a part of the finance department. And then Roger Sweeney, who was the executive director at the time, he had the foresight to elevate the technology component to PSTA to a director level. And Deborah has done a fantastic job in leading a whole department and making technology a strong suit for PSTA, stronger than many other systems, and more elevated. I think some of the projects that Walt has been involved with would only have been because of Deborah's leadership. So she's headed up to the north, to Wisconsin, and maybe we'll convince her parents to move down to sunny Florida. So good thing we have a succession plan in place. I think we've got some options, and we're going to wait a little while to see if maybe she comes back. So maybe I'll be up here announcing that she didn't retire. But for now, we do have a plaque for her, and we want to really thank her for her time, too.
Thank you. Thank you. really thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am so proud of PSTA, and I am extremely pleased in the opportunity that PSTA has given to me. I am going to really miss everybody, but I am going to look at that live streaming, to make sure it's always working. Again, thank you very much.
So if some of your iPads are not working next board meeting, you'll know that we have an excuse.
Okay, next, we want to hear from Ms. Gloria Lepic-Corrigan from the Transit Riders Advisory Committee, and want to find out what's happening.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I don't know, good morning. Yeah, I don't, can you, oh, all right, thank you, very good. Okay. Good morning, Commissioner Barkley, Mr. Miller, and esteemed board members. The Transit Riders Advisory Committee had our meeting on June 20th, and we began with a presentation from Tricia Rodriguez from the Clearwater Ferry Pilot Service that they're going to be expanding to Dunedin. Several of our committee members have experience with the current service, and we really welcome this new route. We then proceeded to address a number of action items that we had, starting with selecting a replacement for our vice chair. Carson Zimmer, who was our vice chair, has accepted an employment opportunity in Tallahassee, and so Mark O'Hara, one of our South County representatives, was chosen to be our new vice chair. We then voted unanimously to amend our bylaws to create a new position for a track member to serve as our representative to the Forward Pinellas Citizens Advisory Committee, the CAC, and we selected Dave Kovar, who is one of our North County track representatives, to fill that position. And you will be asked to confirm his nomination on your consent agenda today. Next, Theo Bakamahalis, PSTA Safety, Security, and Training Department Supervisor, presented the lease agreement with St. Pete Police Department, creating a shared use of space at PSTA's Grand Central Bus Station to create an SSPD Police Resource Center there. After a few questions, the track unanimously endorsed this very interesting opportunity. And then, as an information item, Debbie Leas, the Chief Financial Officer, gave us a presentation of the first draft summary of the fiscal year 2018 PSTA operating budget. We were very encouraged when she showed us how this complies with PSTA's mission, it advances us toward PSTA's vision, and implements key strategies found in the Path Forward Strategic Plan. The last action item that we had was a very important one from the Transit Riders Advisory Committee standpoint, and that was to approve our first track initiative letter. As we've noted in prior meetings, the track agreed by consensus to focus on 3 initiatives over the course of this year: safety, regionalism, and then finally art in transit. First, we wanted to applaud you for adding the word safely to the PSTA mission statement, to safely connect people to places. This is very relevant for this very first initiative. Our safety working group met on June 13th and adopted a draft letter, which all of you have as part of your packet, the draft letter, for your consideration and approval. This letter outlines the reality of safety concerns that we face when we choose to use public transit. Our safety concerns really span the entire trip, not just the time on the bus, but the entire trip from our homes to our destinations and then back again. PST is very safety conscious, and our time spent on the buses is predictably safe. Our greatest risks, we have found, occur really when we're traveling to and from the bus stops in this very automobile-dense and automobile-centric county. PSTA has no direct control over access to and from the bus stops. And yet, this daily issue affects the safety of all the riders that we serve. The draft of the letter that's in front of you will have a few minor additions and changes. Right now, we have a section called danger zones, and there are a number of examples from the central parts of the county and North County, and we're going to be adding a few more from South County as well. But when this letter is finalized, we will be sending copies of it to the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners, Forward Pinellas Planning Advisory Committee and Technical Coordinating Committee, the FDOT District 7, the Florida Consumer Action Network, FCAN, and to others. Today, we are asking you to read this letter and to really hear our concerns, then forward it to your municipal and county staffs. We would also appreciate your feedback and recommendations regarding additional recipients of the letter. We also welcome your questions and hope that you will encourage organizations throughout Pinellas to invite us to speak about these issues. Again, thank you for your attention to this. The next track meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 18th of July at 4 p.m. here at PSTA, and as always, you are invited to attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Very, very thorough report. Thank you. Okay, next we'll hear from Commissioner Bill Johnson with regard to Forward Pinellas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and am I on? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am pleased to be the PSTA representative to Forward Pinellas. And one of the most important things that Forward Pinellas does each year is to come up with a transportation improvement program and priority list. And the Forward Pinellas Board approved the new transportation improvement program list for 17-18 through 21-11. That's not right. Through 2021 through 22, which includes transit projects. And those transit projects have to be on that list in order to receive Federal Transit Administration and Florida Department of Transportation funding. For example, the Urban Corridor Program operating funding on the 100X and the 300X routes are included in the TIP. The Forward Pinellas Board approved its priority list for the upcoming work program, and that's for the next 5 years. And among them is the multimodal priority list, including the US 19 Complete Streets Project in St. Petersburg, the Gateway Mid-County Area Master Plan, and that was approved by the board as well. Transit projects on the list include the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit and the Clearwater Beach to TIA, Regional Transit Service, and the busway. And transit operational enhancements and associated capital, such as waterborne transportation. The key thing here is that there was no change, no lowering of the priority of the transit projects that had been proposed in the original draft of that. The board also reviewed and approved with modifications the transportation management area multi-use trail projects and the transportation alternatives project. There were no changes in those, but what did change is something that was developed by the transit management area top priorities, which were drafted by the TMA on June 2nd, I believe. And there was much discussion at the Forward Pinellas meeting about these, and it resulted in a recommendation to reshuffle some of those, particularly the CSX project and the waterborne transportation projects, rather than being standalone as major items on the top priority list. They were put in a category of regional transit catalyst projects, which really seemed to be much more appropriate. And that then has to go back to the other MPOs to understand. But the feedback that I'm getting is that there is general agreement that that's probably a better place for them to start with. So that's the priority list. Transportation Disadvantage Program, it's a administrative confirmation to have us continue to get transportation disadvantage funds from the state. That's something that has to be done every year. Also, the executive director gave an update on regional best practices study, which was, this is the study to potentially combine the MPOs from this region. That was proposed to be sponsored by the TBARTA board, but as we've heard, the TBARTA board is going under some change. So they decided to defer that, moving that study forward until their next meeting in August. And then I would close by saying that the Pinellas County FDOT Working Group on Tampa Bay Next Project will be meeting on July 13th at 5:30 at the St. Pete College Collaborative Labs here off of Palmerton. Mr. Chairman, that's my report. If there are any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Johnson. Okay, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. I would like for Ellen Zimmett to read the required resolution related to our change to our board rules and regulations related to bid protests, as the Federal Transit Administration has slightly revised the regulations that our local rules are based upon. Ellen?
Resolution 1705, a resolution of the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority Board of Directors amending the rules and regulations as adopted by Resolution 12.07 as amended by amending Section 503 and 504 bid protest procedures and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. With that, is there a motion to approve the...
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you. The motion was moved and seconded. Clarissa, would you open the voting system, please? Pardon me?
Mine did nothing.
Mine open, but it's not doing anything.
Okay.
Vu, do you want to just
oh,
tell
you-
Patty?
Mine is not aye.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we're unanimously approved on that. Thank you very much. Motion passes. The topic on the agenda is the
Debbie's going to do this.
she's going to do this one.
Yeah, actually, Debbie's going to do this one.
Say it again?
This is our next item.
Okay, that's done?
No, we have to do
Okay.
that.
All right, so we're going to talk about the transportation disadvantaged agreements.
Thank you. Good morning. This is a routine annual action item. Normally, you would see this on the consent agenda, but when we presented this to the Finance Committee, not only because of the dollar amount involved, but because of the recognition the Finance Committee wanted to give Commissioner Patty Johnson for her hard work, we've made it an action item. There are three parts to this action item. The first is a resolution authorizing acceptance of our transit disadvantaged grant from the state that we used for our discounted bus program. Very pleased to announce this has increased by 14.8% this year, up to $3.3 million. And part of that is because we've had such a large demand from our TD clients, as well as changes in the formula. So congratulations for all your efforts to bring this to fruition. Secondly, there is an approval for 4 coordination agreements with our local not-for-profit agencies of Neighborly Care, Park, Arc of Tampa Bay, and Lighthouse. The funding for this has remained stable from last year. And finally, we are completing our first year of the TD Late Shift program, and the trips are increasing. As a result, the state has given us an additional $507,000 towards this program for next year. We are asking that we extend the agreements with Uber, CareRide, and United Taxi to be able to complete this great program that we are offering. So the action item before you again is to authorize a resolution accepting the TD grant, approval of 4 coordination agreements with our not-for-profits, and extension agreements with Uber, United Taxi, and Care Ride.
Okay.
So moved.
Make sure we get public comment.
Okay. I think at this point, we'll have Alan, thank you, Debbie, by the way. I didn't have your name on this roster that I'm reading from, so thank you. I appreciate your help. Okay, Alan, would you read the resolution, please?
Resolution 1704, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority authorizing the execution of a Transportation Disadvantaged Trust Fund grant agreement for 2017-2018 with the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Johnson already made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we got Johnson and Johnson. Okay, all right. All right, Clarissa, would you open the voting system, please?
No, you got to after public
Oh,
comment.
comment. All right. Still new at this game.
Yep, there's no cards. You
Okay.
still have to ask.
Okay. So there are no public cards, public speaking cards, so we'll go ahead and open the voting system, please. Unless
Still ask for if anybody has public comment.
Does anybody have public comment?
Great.
All right. Any comments from the board? Okay, Clarissa, would you open the voting system? Here we go. Okay, so again, we have a 9-0 vote, so passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, congratulations, Patty. All right. So we move along now to information items, and Debbie is standing by with an update on the draft budget.
Thank you very much. I'm always very pleased to be able to present a budget for the draft budget for the coming year that is not only balanced, but has a surplus. And we have, for the operating side, we're doing this without any change in service, making the assumption that we're keeping the millage rate the same, and we're trying to come up with ways to help mitigate the cost to employees for what we anticipate is an extremely high increase to our health insurance, which I'll be talking about later on in the presentation. Not only are we balanced from the operating side, but we're also balanced when you put it together on operating and capital for the next 4 years. This is all while assuming that we have the homestead exemption, which will have a negative impact on us of $2 million a year. We're also trying to come up with innovative ways to help not only the operating side of the budget, but the capital, and we'll be talking a little bit about our hybrid component replacement plan. We always start out talking about the budget by seeing where we are today before we look to see where we move forward to. So we will be starting actually today with looking at the forecast for 2017. We had initially anticipated a $599,000 surplus for this year. As you know from our discussions every month, you've seen the fares have decreased significantly, about $1.5 million. Each of the divisions and staff within the divisions and departments have done an excellent job at containing costs. One item that is actually causing this to be $163,000 slight deficit for this year is a change in accounting practice. And that is a non-cash entry, but it does affect where we will end this year. So without that, we would have had a surplus, and I give a lot of credit to each of the people and all the departments for helping make that happen. When we look forward to 2018, as I mentioned, not only do we have a balanced budget, but we have a surplus of $848,000. So let's take a look at some of the assumptions that go into that. Passenger fares, as you know, we just talked about, are down this year. We're basing the forecast for next year based on where we anticipate to be this year, so we're keeping them flat. We are also seeing that DART costs are increasing because we've had an increase in our ridership, but we also have some contractual increases in there as well. On the good news side, we have our property taxes are increasing $3.9 million. And one thing that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about is fringe benefits, specifically the health insurance portion of that. But right now, what I want to let you know is we have no new positions in the budget. However, through route efficiencies, we are able to eliminate through attrition 6 operator positions. So that will help us going forward. So now let's talk a little bit about health insurance because it has a large impact on us. Right now, we're in the process of a solicitation for a health insurance carrier for the next few years, and we are anticipating costs to go up by at least 25%. The reason for this is we've had a significant number of catastrophic claims, and one thing that our union agreement has in there is that we split the cost of the increase 50-50 with the employees. Now, a vast majority of our employees have single coverage. So that would mean that right now, if we were to get it to 25% increase, an employee would go from $23.10 a paycheck all the way up to $70.25 a paycheck. This is important because we need to be competitive in the marketplace. When you take a look at what we've put up on the screen here, there are areas that have offer zero for the single employee, but you can see PSTA is right about in the middle. If we were to increase it to $70, that would put us at the high end of the range, making us non-competitive. When we looked back to see the number or the types of people that we have hired over the last 2 years, most of them are in the baby boomer and the Gen X time frame. And those people are coming to PSTA and making applications because of our health insurance that we have. What we are suggesting is, and this is just a suggestion at this point, is to be able to make it a little bit more affordable for our employees with any potential increases. And that is for PSTA to pick up a greater portion and not stay with the 50-50%. Now, I will tell you this, we are looking at many ways to try to cut the overall cost to the health care program. Like I said, we've hit the 2 years in a row where we've gone up about 75% in our claims costs. We recognize that won't be sustainable. Every program has its peaks and its valleys, but we're trying to contain the overall cost so that we can also reduce the cost to the employees. What would be a great target to go to is $29 per employee. That would make it affordable and competitive in the marketplace. Now, Mayor Beavis was very good to give me a contact at Oldsmar to talk to, which I did, and I'm sure each of you have a lot of questions, ideas, suggestions. I would really welcome them as we go through the process over the next couple weeks to conclude the health insurance. And I would ask that you can reach out to Brad or myself directly, and I will be happy to talk to you because I think the more ideas that we have, the better off we will be in coming to a successful conclusion. Also, you'll be hearing about later in this program is our performance scorecard. Within the operating budget, we have $100,000 set aside for surveys. Surveys for customer satisfaction, community support, as well as employee engagement. This is something we are coordinating with HART on the solicitation. And I'd like to introduce you to Al Burns today. Al, would you stand up? Al is not only now the procurement director for HART, but we've got an agreement with HART to share him. So that is also helping to save money for both agencies. And so I'm very happy to have him on board. I was smiling all morning, and people were saying, "Why are you smiling?" Part of it was that, and part of it was I made my BMI on our health incentives this morning. We also have our capital budget looking forward for the next 5 years. It's $22.9 million. One of the things that we'll be looking is to have financial diversity, which means we will be looking to other areas for money in non-traditional sources. Within there, we're getting money from the Pinellas County, the Community Development Block Grant Funds, City of Clearwater on the Clearwater Beach, I always get the name, transfer facility, as well as the City of St. Petersburg. So when we start looking for other people's money, as I call it, OPM, this really helps us here at PSTA, and it's a very good way of connecting within the community. We are also looking at the hybrid bus component plan. Within this plan, we have put the major components within the capital budget. And they are large dollar items, they are a fixed asset that we can depreciate, and we will be using PSTA funds to do it, rather than FTA funds. By doing that, we will not have the 40 pages of FTA requirements in there. We have found this has worked on the engines and we are saving over the next couple years on engines, somewhere in the tune of $500,000 to $750,000. So this brings us to our discussion on buses. We had a very nice, robust discussion at the Finance Committee. This is something that the board enjoys talking about. And what I've put up here as a slide is to kind of see where we have been and the buses we have ordered over the last couple years. And just to clarify, what we'll be voting on going forward is the order for 2018. Those buses may or may not come, depending on when we actually get them ordered within 2018. We're looking right now at the 35-foot Gillig BAE hybrid buses for $6.6 million. The other ones going forward, I've got shaded in a lighter gray because we are always open to discussion because technology is always changing. But for purposes of the budget, we use the BAE hybrids going forward. And then once we reach the end of our pilot period for the electric bus, we started including 2 electric buses as well into the procurements. Some of the other capital highlights is that we are working on the design of the Clearwater Downtown Intermodal Center, as well as the Clearwater Beach Transfer Facility, which will be open before spring break, various technology improvements, and the Regional Fair Media Project, where we will be actually releasing the robust app for Flamingo. And when we take all of this, not only the operating budget for 18, but the 5-year capital plan, and put it in one picture, you can see on this chart, we are balanced all the way through 2021, again, keeping in mind that we'll be losing $2 million a year from the homestead exemption. As I mentioned, our 2 biggest challenges will be the homestead exemption and our health insurance costs. What are we doing to address these? We've talked about route efficiencies. We'll be looking at low-performing routes. We'll be looking at new funding partners with financial diversity. The planning department is doing an excellent job. They're putting in for every discretionary grant that's humanly possible, and they're doing a wonderful job, so he'll be very successful in that, as well as various cost containment measures and wellness initiatives. Are there any questions regarding the 2018 draft budget? And you should have at your places summer reading material. That's why it's a draft at this point. This is in black and white. We didn't pay for the color on this one. And I would invite all of you to really go through this, come back to Brad or myself with questions, suggestions. I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Very thorough report. Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
You have to turn me on?
Yep, I think it is.
Thank you. Never realized quite what that meant. Okay, different terminology. A microphone on, yes. On page 14, that's the 5-year budget capital projection. You mentioned that the homestead exemption would have an impact. So in looking at the bottom number, that's before the adoption of the homestead exemption.
No, that's actually including that assumption in there. So we are actually, like I said, balanced both capital and operating all the way through 2021, which is actually an improvement over what we had projected last year.
Because last year we were saying we'd go negative in 20, is that right?
20, yes.
Okay. The other thing, can you spend just a little more time talking about the savings on procurement of replacement parts by using local funds rather than federal funds?
Absolutely. When you use any federal funds, there usually are a significant number of clauses that go with it and requirements that each of the vendors have to be able to supply to us. Sometimes when you put all of those federal clauses together, it can add a significant number, like 40 pages, to your solicitation, which can be quite daunting to many vendors who are not used to this. By using local funds to do that, we take away all those extra pieces for vendors to respond to, making it a much more simple response to what we're doing. In addition, it also removes requirements for the Buy America on some of the component parts. So we also are getting savings from that side.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other? I think that's it, right? Okay. Commissioner Beavis?
Yep, just a quick question on the homestead exemption. I don't know if this is an easy explanation or not, but we at the city have, obviously, and everybody in their municipalities are looking at how that is going to affect us if in fact it passes. And I don't know if this number, I was trying to look through it. I know at the city, it's going to have like $150,000 impact if you look at it today, but we also took into consideration that by the time it goes into effect, that home values will have increased and
That is
it becomes more of almost a wash. I don't know how that,
We actually took into consideration that home values would increase in here as well, so that when the impact hits, what it would be. And we also worked with Pinellas County to help to determine
and
that.
having said that, it's still $2 million, or is
It's
that?
still, it's $1,962,000, so I rounded it off to $2 million.
No, but if you look at the, page 14, it does look like it is almost a wash with the increase, like you said, but
Yeah.
it goes down by like
Right,
$100,000.
right, that's what,
That does help, but we took all of that into
okay,
consideration.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much, Debbie. We appreciate it. And we'll take this home and read it. Okay, next will be the performance scorecard. Brad Miller,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, so again, the schedule for the budget is that next month there'll be an action item to approve the trim notice that goes out that essentially sets the maximum millage rate, which is very similar schedule to all the cities and the county has. And then in August, we will have an action item to approve the capital plan. And I'm sure we'll have some more discussions about the buses and all the capital items. And then in September, we'll have our 2 public hearings.
Okay, thank you.
With that, we move on to our second informational item, which I'd like to introduce Mr. Ryan Gallivan from Transpro Consulting, who is going to give an overview this month on the performance scorecard initiative that we've been working on all spring. As you will recall, we had a PSTA board workshop back in January, and then last month we approved new and improved mission and vision statements that guide then what Ryan's going to talk about. This whole performance scorecard process kind of bakes the goals and objectives of the organization into the entire organization. So I won't steal any more of his thunder. Go for it.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Ryan Gallivan, as Brad mentioned. I'm here representing Transpro Consulting, and about 5 or so months ago, we were engaged to assist the organization in developing a performance measurement system for the organization. And today I'm here to provide you with a status update on that. The first thing I'd like to mention is you'll see in your agenda that there are 5 or 6 elements of this presentation. Today we're going to talk about one subset of that. And in future meetings, we'll be providing more detail on some of those other specific elements that you see listed in the agenda. For the past 5 months, the leadership team has developed a strategy for the board's consideration for measuring organizational performance at multiple levels, at the organizational level, the department level, and the level of the individual employees. All of this was done under the umbrella of the path forward, to provide that link between the elements and the goals of the path forward process with the functional elements of the day-to-day progress of working throughout the organization. As we went through this process, there were 3 areas that we focused on, and that we can summarize that into the what, the how, and the who. The what represents what we're trying to achieve as an organization, the organizational outcomes, including the mission and the vision. The how refers to the how we will get there. How will we measure our progress as we move forward towards achieving those organizational outcomes? And the who reflects the, literally as it suggests, the who is going to get us there in terms of the performance and making sure that we achieve the goals and the performance levels that we're working to achieve. Looking at that more specifically, the what and the how, the who, and bringing that down to a more granular level, under the what we're trying to achieve, the elements under this umbrella are the organizational mission, vision, values, and the organizational outcomes. organizational outcomes reflecting what is it that we wish to achieve by the end of the upcoming year. The how reflects the operating plan, the budget, and the performance scorecard, which was referenced earlier. The who reflects the employees, including the CEO, and how those employees will be evaluated. And one thing I'd like to point out on this slide is that all of these are connected, and that is one of the key elements of what it is we're trying to achieve, that they're all connected and aligned. So, for example, the performance scorecard is designed to measure our progress towards achieving the organizational outcomes, which in turn help us achieve the mission and vision. On the who side, the employee performance evaluations, including the CEO's evaluation, are tied to the performance scorecard and the values. There are structural elements in those employee evaluations that structurally connect an individual employee performance with the performance scorecard, which in turn is connected to the organizational outcomes, which in turn is connected to the mission and vision. So you have that alignment all the way throughout the elements of the performance plan to ensure that everything is moving in lockstep. Today we're going to focus on the first three bullets of the what? The mission, the vision, and the values. I would like to give you a little bit of a preview of some of the other elements, however. So in July, I mentioned today we'll focus on mission, vision, and values. In July, we'll return and talk about the scorecard a bit more in detail. To give you a preview of that, this graphic on the left of this screen represents the organizational scorecard. Now, I know that the print is small and it's difficult to read, so I'll just read. Oh, you have that in front of you. Great. Where I would focus your attention is that column on the left that represents the functional areas on which the scorecard focuses. And those are community support, financial stability, customer satisfaction. I am having trouble reading that, employee engagement, and commitment to performance. Within each of those buckets are a set of 5 to 7 performance metrics that will measure how successful we are at achieving each of those 5 areas and achieving community support and financial stability, et cetera. And those 5 areas themselves are connected to the organizational outcomes. So you can see, again, that connection between what we're measuring in the day-to-day and what it is we're trying to achieve. And that will help keep us on track. In September, we'll return and present the employee evaluations to you for your consideration. And one thing I'd like to point out for a moment there is that is the graphic on the right, to point out that at the top half of that graphic are elements of organizational and department level scorecards that those departments and individuals have the ability to impact. So built into the employee performance evaluation are elements of the department and organizational scorecard, so that employee performance is linked to their ability to contribute to department and organizational success. Below that box, you will see values, and we'll talk about those in detail in a moment. What I'd like to point out here is that built into the scorecard is an element that reflects how effectively and how well that the employees are espousing and operating under the umbrella of the stated PSTA values. So that's a little preview of what you'll see in upcoming months. Today, I'd like to dig in and share with you the mission, vision, and values. This is the current mission statement, and you can see from it that it's very positive, it's very robust, and it has a lot of positive elements in it. It's very aspirational. A mission statement is meant to focus on defining why the organization exists, so short and simple. So in developing a new mission statement, it is not saying that the spirit of the current mission statement is flawed. What it's attempting to do is make a statement that is much more fundamental, and that is to state why we exist. And that is a single sentence: to safely connect people to places. That is why we're here, to safely connect people to places. The vision statement is intended to be more aspirational. It's essentially indicating where do we want to be in 5 years, or who do we want to be when we grow up. Here is the current mission statement, and to the right of that is the new mission statement that was developed. And I should mention that this was developed by the management team, with us serving as facilitators, but it's very much a product of the management team, and with communication with the board throughout the process as well. The new vision statement: to be the people's first choice for transportation and a driving force for social, environmental, and economic vitality in the community through innovation and partnership. And you can see in this vision statement that a number of elements of the former mission statement are preserved. So that spirit of wanting to be forward-thinking, financially strong, and being innovative are preserved, But there are a few other elements added to that as well, indicating what is it that we're striving for. Finally, the organization's values. And before we go through and look at them, look at the list item by item, I want to just take a moment and indicate what this is representing. This is representing what the PSTA espouses, the values we espouse, how we expect our employees to show up, what we represent to the community. You know, one way to think of this is how we play in the sandbox. This is how we want to live and present ourselves. And that is also built in to some of the elements that you saw a moment ago. This is built into the employee evaluation program. You recall there was that element there that had the PSTA values right in that in the employee evaluation. What that does is it builds in a structural element into the employees' day-to-day lives that will reflect how well they, in turn, are reflecting these values. Many organizations will have a list of values, and they are a nice list of values. The next step that PSTA is taking is to build that in structurally into people's day-to-day lives to provide a mechanism to ensure that these values will be forwarded. And I know you have them in front of you, but I'll read them so that everyone can hear them. 1, we are trustworthy and trust each other. 2, we invite robust debate and listen to others' ideas. 3, we take personal responsibility to design customer-focused solutions and own the results. 4, we innovate and drive reliability, quality, and efficiency. 5, we foster professional development and encourage each other to take initiative. And 6, we operate with open and transparent communications. And the last thing I'd like to share with you before taking any questions you may have is the timeline to show you what you can expect moving forward. In July, as we mentioned, we will be here to share with you more details of the organizational outcomes and the performance scorecard. So we'll talk about that in a bit more detail than the preview that you had this morning. In September, we will return and have a similar conversation for the performance evaluation process, or the employee evaluation process for your consideration. Once those are in effect, then in mid-18, you as a board will start receiving monthly updates on the performance scorecard progress. The scorecard itself is meant to be reported quarterly. However, the data elements are intended to be tracked monthly so that on a month-to-month basis, you will have that performance update so that you'll be able to react to things midstream as opposed to having to wait in 3-month intervals to understand how things are progressing. And finally, in October of 2018, the new performance evaluations for employees will take effect. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Any questions from our board? Brad?
Thank you, Ryan. And I know that perhaps this is a little bit confusing to all of us. I think even to our own employees. We had a really good an all-day workshop on this a couple weeks ago with Ryan and Mark Ash presenting this. It's complicated, but I think over time, as PSTA starts owning it, and you start seeing it in your board packet every month, and you see this chart, it really will help PSTA. It will help make sure that the board's actions, the board's goals, through my evaluation down to the individual employees, all drives to the single mission and vision of the organization. Not that that doesn't happen now. I mean, we have the strategic plan, and we've had sort of a focus on setting goals, but this really quantifies it. I think it makes it easier for board members to complete their evaluation of me, and easier for our managers to complete evaluations of the employees, because half of it essentially is already completed, or you know whether the goals were accomplished or not. It should make it easier and more focused. So I think it's a very positive thing. You'll see this again next month. You can look at some of the metrics that are listed on the sheet. We talked about it. It's important for the PSTA board, I think, to adopt this, because this is the definition of success that we'll be striving, and this whole thing will be tied to. But really, it's, as Ryan described, the key strategies, the 5 key strategies on the left-hand side of the page. That's really what the board is approving as the goals of the organization. And then these are just example metrics that we'll be tracking, and that we can tweak from time to time and adjust. But it's really these 5 key strategies on the left-hand side that you'll be considering next month.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to Commissioner Torga.
Yes, I'd like to just ask a couple questions, if I can, of the presenter.
Mr. Galliver?
How far down in the organization have you taken this? And how has the input been from that? And is it understandable to them? Do they like this process? Perhaps I'll let you respond to that. And then second of all, I just want to make a comment that just in general, that it behooves, I think, us to make sure that it's kept as, if I may, exacting or as simplistic as possible to achieve the goal, so that it doesn't get, cumbersome or complicated, or there are so many different elements within the presentation that life changes. Things change, and suddenly we say, well, wait a minute, I guess that really doesn't apply here, or that's not the focus, because I'm now the manager, and I've had to have a mid-year switch in one particular area or 2 particular areas. Now, how do I handle that with that employee? I could be more specific, but I trust that you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll try to have every point, and if I didn't reach any of them, you just feel free to remind me. And I believe your first question was how far into the organization did this reach? And we reach at different levels for different components. When we were talking about mission and vision and outcomes, we worked with the management team, so that's the department heads, the leadership, the CEO. And the thought process behind that is the management team, led by the CEO and responding to the board, are charged with determining the direction of the organization. And with that thought process, and for that reason, the discussion about the ultimate direction of the organization, specifically I'm referring to mission, vision, and those high-level outcomes, were developed by the management team. They were developed by the folks who are charged with setting that vision and that direction for the organization. When we worked on the department-level scorecards, we met with every department, and there were department-level staff in every one of those meetings. And it varied from department to department, whether every employee of the department was there or not. I think possibly because of the size of the departments, but there were manager-level and staff-level folks in those meetings and developing the department-level scorecards. And then the end of the process was several weeks ago, an all-day workshop with the directors and managers, an audience of about 40 or 50 employees, where we presented everything in detail and took questions. And that was the last large communication, and the intention walking away from that was for the organization to have internal conversations to see if things need to be tweaked as a result of that. So it touched on not necessarily every single employee, but employees at all levels of the organization. I know you had other questions than that, so what have I not touched on?
I was talking about, to some degree, this, I'll just use it very simply, the simplicity of the evaluation of employees, where in fact they have a specific function that they're attempting to achieve. And if you broaden that to some, oftentimes I've seen in organizations, you end up with them really not having control over that, or perhaps it's changed during the year. And so, for example, a bus driver that's riding on a route, I'm not really necessarily speaking about that, but I'm perhaps talking about another area, for example, in the maintenance or what have you, where a specific item becomes more important during the year. And then you have to change it, then you end up making some modifications. You could, it's possible. So I just wanted to see how detailed it got when we got down to the individual.
Yeah, there are 2 elements of the process that will address those 2 concerns that you just mentioned. The first is in developing the employee evaluations. What's been developed and will be presented to you is the structure of the evaluations. One of the elements of the employee evaluations is individual employee goals. And that the intention is for those to be set in conversation at the beginning of the year between the manager and the employee. So that provides the mechanism for the manager and the employee to understand exactly what is expected and whether or not that's realistic, and making sure that it's unambiguous. The second element is the employee evaluation conversations will transition from an annual cycle to a twice-a-year cycle. Now, I don't recall the details as to, and someone closer may have more detail. I believe at the end of the year that it's still going to be ultimately an annual evaluation, but what is built into that is a 6-month conversation. So the employee goals that will be set up at 6-month intervals. And it may be that the goal was set up at the beginning of the year, endures throughout the entire year because of the nature of that goal. But it may be that one goal changes mid-year. So if something happens where one goal was short-term in nature, then at that 6-month point, new goals can be set. Or more specifically to the point that you were addressing, things change. We have plans, but sometimes things change and we have to shift our priorities mid-year for a variety of possible reasons. That 6-month check-in, that 6-month revisitation of the goals provides a built-in mechanism for being able to do that.
I asked that in relationship to the big overview one, where we had some percentages here, and it said performance goals, there's one as low as 2%, okay? And so we're down at 35 and 37% and things like that, and those are numbers that are always difficult. I was just curious to how they came up with that, but I wanted to ask it just in a general term, and then see how far that would go down within the organization, because those numbers can, from year to year, from time to time change, or from a manager to a manager change.
Yeah, sure. So I can better answer your question. Can I ask you what percentage, were you looking at percentages that were at the rows of individual metrics?
I was looking at performance goals, where there's some percentages.
Yes, so on some of those individual metrics, and this is something as we come in future months, we'll be giving you a lot of detail on that. But for the performance metrics where there's an individual goal for a specific metric, in the best case scenario, where this is something that we've already been able to track, we have historic data on which to build a goal. And so the idea is to look at where we are now and set a goal that pushes us a little further. So that's something that's based on, that's a database thing. For some of these metrics where they've never been measured before and we don't have historical data, we had to make our most educated hypothesis on what that target may be. So there is a little bit, in the best case scenario, and this is true with most of the metrics, there is historical data on which to build it. And so that provides a little foundation to help insulate us from some of that variations because we have that past pattern.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, our next speaker is Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. Maybe the first one is just a suggestion, but on the performance scorecard, or the worksheet here? Yeah, you better stay up there for a minute.
And we have another couple of speakers in the queue, so you might just want to stay up there for a little while.
Sure.
I don't remember things very well, and some of these abbreviations on here, I think on this might be helpful. NPS is Net Promoter Score.
Yes.
The ABBG is American Benchmarking.
Yes.
I think that might be useful. And the customer satisfaction, that's based on an annual survey or performance survey.
Yes.
So those are just suggestions. The other thing, can you talk a little bit about how the PSTA values were arrived at? Did that come from the staff, or is that something that was recommended to the staff? I know we have approved the mission and the vision, but I like them. I'm just kind of wondering how they came up with a background for them.
Those were developed in a workshop with the management team. So these were developed and put forth by the management team.
Okay, and the one thing that I often see in a value is continual improvement. And I'm reading that that's in item 4, we innovate and drive reliability, quality, and efficiency. Is that where continual improvement would be included?
4 and 5, I would say. We talked about that.
Okay.
It just didn't make the final cut, or it was incorporated into some of the other elements.
And one thing I'll add to that is the nature of the scorecard is for each of the metrics where you see a performance goal, those goals are meant to push us beyond the level of performance we have today. So that's a structural element that brings us towards continual improvement.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate the idea of performance measurements and accountability and that kind of thing. So this is all good, and I would say that as we go forward, get the opportunity to review the process of the previous year and kind of make those changes. Because I think at some point, if we get the performance measurements right, and that sometimes takes a little while, you have to make some changes that really reflect the board's perception of what performance is. So it may take some changes, but that we get something that we can compare year to year. I mean, that becomes the most important, that we're improving or not on these categories. So I would just say that this is, from my perspective, it's a work in progress, and I'm glad we're going to see it over a few months, and hopefully we can stay open-minded to making adjustments as we go. One of the things that we talked a lot about last year at the board level is the environmental, social, and fiscal balance of this board, and so how do those aspirations, everything that we do, translate to this? And so I think I can see some of it. The fiscal, I can see. Environmental, I see a one-line item, and then I see some social areas with community and customer satisfaction. So some of those things blend, and therefore, if we're still focused on that, and I don't know that we still are, and I don't know how balanced those three items are with this board, but then I think we can at least say, for instance, not that we all like to talk about buses, because that seems to be the thorn in all of our sides sometimes, but that's an area that I think does touch on social services and environmental and fiscal, that particular item. And so it has a lot of ramifications. And so how do those things get reflected, I think, is going to be important. So anyway, I think it's a great start, and I look forward to hearing more in the months ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple quick questions here. On the financial stability, operating cost per revenue hour, I would think we should consider adding mile to that as well. And that could just be slash mile, and then the 97 an hour could just be slash with the mileage rate as well, because that's, I believe, a very important metric for us to look at, and a very important one for the employees to know about. Is that, and I'm assuming, is that fully allocated cost per hour, or is that just operating cost per hour?
That is just operating cost.
Okay, thank you. And then on community support, where it says number of local investments, 8, and state and federal legislative initiative support, can you just explain that to me, and how does the average employee affect the outcome of those?
Which one?
On the community support, the top item there.
Percent of service area residents who feel PSTA provides value? That one?
Yes. Yep. Where it says number of local investments, and the performance goal is 8, and then the state and federal legislative initiative support is 2. If you could explain that in a little further detail, and how does the average PSTA employee affect the outcome of those items?
Sure, and in looking at the various elements, depending on the metric, certain employees have a greater ability to impact the outcomes than others. So for example, for some of the customer satisfaction metrics, for example, bus operators will have a larger ability to impact a lot of that than perhaps some administrative staff. Likewise, on the number of local investments in the state and federal legislative initiative support rate, that would fall most squarely on the shoulders of the planning and the marketing communications departments, who have, as part of their regular work activities and charges, to go and work on those sorts of things, to try to help forward the state level initiatives and to try to increase the level of local investment, the number of local investments. So in that case, it is a subset of employees that have more of an impact on that one than on some of the other ones. And certainly more employees would have an indirect impact. But again, we could go through metric by metric and see that some have the ability to impact more than others. Some are more universal in nature.
So this is going to be more customized for each position?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you see the department scorecards, you'll see that in a bit more detail, how there's a different focus in each of the departments.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Gallivan. This is a Great report. I've heard parts of it before in some of our committee meetings and discussions. My apologies for being late. We were double booked at a peer groundbreaking ceremony, so I got here as soon as I could. But thank you very much. I think we're headed in the right direction. If it's not measured, it's not managed, and it's always great to have transparency so that everybody knows fairly what we're looking at when doing evaluations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is reports and correspondence. Brad, you want to update us on some reports?
Thank you. Yeah, so in your packets are, first, of course, the ridership reports for the month of May and some of the operating statistics. Also in your packet are two presentations. First, a presentation that Whit Blanton gave to our PSTA Planning Committee, but he also gave it to the Tampa Bay TMA group on an idea, that the TMA has sponsored of developing a network of express routes, regional express routes across the whole Tampa Bay area to Pasco County, to Hillsborough County, Pinellas County. The next step on that, you can see the presentation that he made that's in your packet. The next step is for PSTA to put, with HART, go together and put some details into how an express bus service might be operated and implemented. The idea maybe is that this new TBARTA would be the entity that would oversee a regional network of express routes. And then third in your packet is a update, and this is also a handout at your places that looks like this, an update on the transit feasibility plan, the regional transit feasibility plan. This is the plan that HART is managing. This was also presented briefly to both the PSTA Planning Committee and the Tampa Bay TMA, and I think also Mr. Jones and I identified that it was presented at the Forward Pinellas. But this is the study that is ongoing. They produce these nice brochures, I think, every month now to give you an update on where that stands as it moves forward. If there, let me just quickly highlight the next item, which is future meeting subjects. Also at your places is a little green sheet like this, which some of you maybe got from me if I had a one-on-one with you recently, that I'll be passing out new ones, updated ones of these each month to you. But this sort of is an idea that we had of just providing a handy list of upcoming meetings that are on the horizon that you might want to, if they're in your neighborhood or you're interested, you might want to go to, or just check your calendars to see that you have them on there. Mr. Johnson mentioned on July 13th, there is this Tampa Bay Next. That's the new name of the Tampa Bay Express toll lane project that FDOT canceled, did a quote reset, and now is having public meetings that are in theory more open-minded. Although at the St. Pete Chamber meetings that I attended last week, it really seemed like it was not too much different than the original proposal, but we'll see. The one Pinellas public meeting on this, most of the public meetings are in Hillsborough County, is on July 13th at the Collaborative Labs. I did want to highlight also coming up at the conclusion of our board meeting next month, we'll be having a little ribbon cutting with members of the Florida Department of Public Health in attendance, right out here at PSDA's bus stop out here on our third Breathe Easy Zone ribbon cutting. A Breathe Easy Zone is a red painted area of a transit center that is designated for people who want to smoke, meaning the rest of the area is Breathe Easy because you're not supposed to smoke there. This has been very successful down in St. Petersburg and in Clearwater so far in just self-policing. Smokers go to their area and it benefits transit riders like all of us. So we're we got some, the Pinellas County Health Department and the Florida Department of Health have some staff that have been very helpful and very positive about smoking cessation and working with our riders on this. So they'll be here to sort of thank us for initiating that. So that should be fun and healthy, hopefully. Health improving, I guess.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go back to the transit feasibility plan and the presentations. And during the planning committee, I made a couple comments, and I'd just like to rephrase them for the rest of the board. This is the project that we've had several briefings on from Scott Pringle. And so it's not new, but as you're looking at the handout that we got today, they're getting down into the mode choices for the selected, the target routes. And the target routes are really coming from previous studies that we did. But to me, the project is missing an element which is a reconfirmation of what the goals are of the improved transit in the Tampa Bay area. We have here the Tampa Bay Partnership and members of the legislative delegation talking about the importance of having improved transit here. But one of the things that we need to focus on is the buy-in from the grassroots, the folks that are going to have to provide the local financial support for this plan. Yes, we have to follow the federal process to make sure we qualify for federal and state funding, but I know that there's a part of the strategy that's being used now is we're going to come up with the recommended routes and then recommended implementation on those routes. And my concern is that people will come back and say, well, that's the bad choice of the mode, without having the ability to say, well, if that's the bad choice of that mode, how do we satisfy the overall objective that we're trying to accomplish? And I'm really concerned with the process, and it reminds me of some of the early phases of Green Light, where we very quickly identified the objectives and then went and started spending a lot of time in selecting the routes and what the feasibilities are. And we sort of lost track of, are we trying to drain the swamp? I'm not sure where to go right now, but I'm really concerned that we're spending $1 million on something and we may end up in the same spot.
Commissioner Johnson, could you help explain to me what you mean by the bad choice of the mode?
The bad choice?
Just kind of dialing back a little bit to something that you said, that you were concerned that, well, I don't want to paraphrase it for you, but you were concerned that perhaps we're rushing into the corridor that we choose and that we may have some type of bad choice of the mode. That is, I wasn't following you there. It's just.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify something. I don't think I intended to say that. I'm concerned that people will be focused on the mode choice on the particular route, and they will be complaining about the choice of that, rather than focusing in on why we need to do something on that route. So if somebody comes and says, well, I don't think rail is the right choice on that route, well, okay, what are the other alternatives to rail for meeting the needs that were identified in that route? So it's that focusing in on how do we need to be competitive in this community? How do we need to provide more sustainability? If people are going across the bridges and there's an accident that shuts down, I mean, commerce almost shuts down for 4 hours in the area until we get some of these things resolved. So this is something that I plan to bring up at the TB next meeting when we meet in a couple of weeks. But we're spending $1 million on this project, which kind of had its orientation in the proposal from CSX to buy their routes. And the DOT has said, well, we really can't spend federal funding on that unless we go through this process. Now we're going through this process and without, in my opinion, having a real good grounding on why we need to have better transit in this area. We've had a lot of newspaper articles, and it's saying, well, T-BARTA, the new T-BARTA is great, this process is great, but the folks that are going to have to help support the local funding need to know how it's going to help them in the things that they do, that when they call for a air conditioning repair and that guy is stuck in traffic, well, they're going to be paying for some of the costs relative to that, or how their mom or dad, when they have to give up their car, can get places. So I just think we're missing some of that.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, and I don't, I'm not too far off of that thought. I mean, I do think sometimes the mode of transportation discussion takes us way off course of what we're trying to do to get somebody around, and so we get fixated on that. And at the same time, I think there's the whole, well, what additional tax is it going to be for me kind of conversation. So that drives it instead of the conversation about, what do we want for our kids and our grandkids? What are we trying to get to? Because obviously we're not going to get from here to there overnight. We have to do it gradually. So those conversations, I think, of trying to, and so all of the studies that we keep referencing in this study, I do think go back to, like our alternative analysis here and rail, and then, well, that's going to cost a penny for everybody, and everybody just, they said, forget about it. We're not doing it. So I think the conversation needs to include those items as we go along, just to keep everybody on their toes, but at the same time, try to have parts of those conversations that talk about the real message that we're trying to get, and that is getting people around. And that's sometimes is a difficult one to split, but I think we need to do more of that. So, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Good morning, thank you. I'm glad you got here. I sent a message to Brad this weekend. I went to a meeting, and they were all city officials, and I found out that other than me in the room of city officials in Pinellas County, no one knew what transportation disadvantage is, much less did they know where DART comes from or who pays for what. So I think that this study needs to be a bridge to information to each city. And I can see now how we failed at Green Line because nobody knew what we were doing. In other words, they didn't know that in TD, it's just like you and Brian said a couple of meetings ago. What are we about? Are we just about putting big buses with great signs on them? No. We're providing transportation for those people that can't provide for themselves. Is it important? Yeah, tell grandma, sorry, you can't go. And they didn't know, and they don't know. And there has to be some way to fix it, and if we're going to spend $1 million, I'd love to see us at least let our city officials know what part of their ad valorem taxes are going where and how much we're getting from the state. That information is something we're not sharing.
Okay. I don't see any other comments from our board, so thank you, everyone, for your feedback. These are all very serious things to weigh as we move forward again. Certainly, we want to learn from our past mistakes and not make the same mistakes again, so all of your comments are very meaningful. Moving on to our next item on the agenda, we have future meeting subjects. Did we kind of already cover that, Brad?
Yeah,
Is that what the green sheet refers us to?
Yeah.
So are there any questions about any upcoming meetings on our sheet? Okay. Then that means before we adjourn, we always go around and hear from our board members with final comments or questions. We'll start with Commissioner Tornga, and we'll go down the dais.
Thank you very much. I just want to make a couple quick comments. I really appreciated the financial presentation, Deborah. Not just what you did today, but the presentation that we had received, so that we could really get a look at that. The ad valorem, utilizing the ad valorem issue was fine in the fact that it was explained to us, so we understand that. So that spill out, we understand where those sums can go to. So that was proper as far as I'm concerned. I do appreciate the card that Brad has been handing out to us. It's just an update of things that we can be working on, and this comes back to information. And in this particular case, we could even focus on this, on the transportation disadvantaged and/or whatever that is called in the end. But for a statement of what it is that we're attempting to do and present. I did want to make a comment about the evaluations again. And that is the simplicity. I just want to make sure that we put that out there, particularly as it applies to employees, so that they understand completely and totally what they're being evaluated on, and it doesn't constantly change, or there's not a constant change to it. I understand the complexity of the first one. The first one is for the highest level. It involves a lot of issues here. And so those, I can be understanding of that. I also want to make a comment about just really briefly on the regional transit feasibility plan, or what, there's other names for that. And again, what we're attempting to do is we're looking at ways to achieve financial advantage utilizing federal or state funds. And one of the reasons why we had to go through that long study that we're going through right now is for that little word predetermination, so that we weren't predetermining anything. And that point is really well brought up by Mr. Johnson here, in the fact that we attempt then to categorize or put things in when we hear that we're looking at a particular corridor, and that corridor looks like it belongs to a particular mode, then we want to jump to that mode, and we shouldn't, and we don't want to. I think about the T-BART, looking at this express transportation, utilizing buses, et cetera, that would combine the regions, is a great point to that. And I think that kind of action then, although it is predetermining because we do have buses, but we do have buses. And so how do we tie them together and move comfortably? That's all that I'll have for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to commend PSTA on their presence at the Pride Parade on Saturday. It was fantastic to see as many PSTA staff members there, and your enthusiasm was certainly seen, and just vibrant, and I enjoyed seeing you all there. So I just think it was a great representation of PSTA.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree also. Great work from staff on the operating and capital budget. As we all know, as elected officials, we sometimes live and die by our accounting department and how well they manage our money. If we could please share with Commissioner Welsh that we did not hear once the word fiscal cliff today. It was very nice. So definitely, he always asks about that, so we'll definitely let him know that it wasn't mentioned today. So thank you for your work. Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
I just wanted to say thank you to our board. We have a great board, very supportive, and our staff is, again, exactly what you said, what makes us or breaks us. And we are going forward just don't forget about transportation disadvantaged, please.
Never heard of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I'd like to compliment the track on their focusing in on safety awareness and also accessibility. I've been riding the bus a little bit more frequently this last month, partially trying to emulate our esteemed leader here, and I'm not anywhere near that because my schedule doesn't allow that, but looking at curbs for people that are in a mobility device, it's a real barrier in trying to look at a place like the Countryside Mall, for instance. But as I said, I've been riding the bus, and I've gotten off a bus and watched my connecting bus leaving the station. Both of them were on, my bus was early, so it wasn't the fault of the system, but it was kind of oh, okay, I get to wait here another 30 minutes. I've gotten wet when I've been riding the bus, and because there are no shelters along South Fort Harrison. But as far as positives, I have really felt the next bus arrival information is so valuable to someone who's not as used to taking the bus and doesn't know the schedules by heart. Having that in your smartphone is really helpful. And really, there are a lot of nice people that ride the bus, dedicated working people that are happy to chat with you when you're on the bus. And also the other thing that I've seen is, and I've been riding mostly from Countryside down to downtown Clearwater, and most of the buses are well used. There's 12 to 20 people on, I think, every bus route that I rode in that area. And so we're really serving a valuable purpose to the community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Barkley? And thank you for running the meeting today.
That was fun. I'd just like to, do I need to turn this on, I guess? I just wanted to say congratulations to Walt Lentz and to Deborah Woodward for their service. You're wonderful folks, and you've done a great job for PSTA and our community, and thank you very much, and we're going to miss you both. I would also like to congratulate our CEO, as Commissioner Johnson alluded to. If you've been following him on Facebook, he's been riding the bus. He committed to riding the bus this month, and he's been very dedicated in doing that, and I think that's a terrific opportunity for him to learn more about the route, and thereby, by his experience, we all vicariously are learning something about riding the bus as well. So thank you very much, and congratulations for that commitment and that result. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was really encouraged with the conversation we had today about communicating, what our plans are going forward, and, kind of watching the Tampa Bay Next thing proceed. And I'm not quite sure that DOT understands, just my opinion, the importance of that. And I think we should watch that very closely, what the public response is to that and their perception, because, we could our plans could become a casualty based on what happens there. So I think we need to really kind of watch that and make sure that we're going above and beyond what we even think we need to do in terms of communication, so the public understands where it is we're trying to go and the reasons that we need to go there. So, and then I would like to see in the next budget presentation, we have the number of buses that we're going to buy each year. But I remember, I don't know if it was last year or when it was, but there was a spreadsheet that showed the number of buses that we had to replace each year. And I know that's changed a bit because we've been running buses longer, but I would like to see what the budget looks like. That's assuming that we buy 8 or 9 hybrids, but I would also like to see what that looks like if we bought other types of vehicles too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Eggers.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, first of all, appreciate the budget discussion and some of the things that we're getting into, and I think I would echo those comments on the bus purchase program too, because I do think it has effects in all areas of the strategies and goals that this board has, whether it's fiscal, whether it's environmental or social. And I don't see enough of a trade-off there, but so I'd like to see more of that too. And I think that one of the issues that was brought up a couple of years ago was that reliability. And if you don't replace them as they were planned, then the reliability of the system goes down and it affects our riders. So those are important things to consider. I really want to thank Gloria and Track for the work that they're doing. Just it's great stuff, and the focus on public safety. And to the chair and to Councilmember Johnson, thank you for getting out there and riding this month. I think learning vicariously through them is true, and we are. I got a call from a reporter who said, "Well, how much are you riding the bus?" I said, "Well, I don't ride the bus. The schedule you have running all over the place doesn't allow for it, but I do think it's important that we learn as much as we can. So thank you to you guys for doing that." Congrats to those who are retiring. Best of luck to you and I know there's some emotional things going on, but congratulations for your career here, and wish you all the very best. Two final things, just some thoughts, and I have so many people ask me this question. It's almost like, okay, well, I'll ask it, and I'm sure we've talked about it before, but having pull-offs for our buses, and looking more into that so that they're not sticking out in the road and they're backing everybody up. So the only thing that they talk about PSTA is when they cuss them for stopping their progress. And so I said, all right, I'll ask. I know we've had a study on pull-offs and how they get back on and all that, so I'm sure if we can look at that, pull that out. I would like to see what work we've done on that. And finally, three of my colleagues from the County Commission aren't here. They're at FAC, they're Florida League of Counties. And so I think half of us went this year, and 3 of those 4 are on our board here. So that's why they're not here. Otherwise, I'm sure they would be here. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Schulman.
I wanted to thank the board. Last few months have been incredibly insightful, and I've learned a lot, both from reading the reports as well as the dialogue and information that each of you share. In particular, I want to thank Commissioner Johnson. Your questions and way of working through issues have answered questions I didn't know I had and brought up issues that I think I should think more about. So I appreciate you helping those of us along that we didn't even know we needed the help. And finally, I'm glad that we're going to spend some time when we talk about the budget, getting into the employee benefit side at our next meeting. Hoping to also spend some time in the Finance Committee meeting, because the healthcare issue and healthcare costs are not going away. It's not a singular budget year issue. I'm interested to see how we had an increase in catastrophic claims. I'm interested to see what they were, how they happen. If we're using healthcare to attract employees, are we attracting the right pool of employees that are making sure that we're providing a good value to our customers and to our taxpayers? So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm very interested to see how that plays out. So thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your comments, and I would also like to add my thanks, my gratitude for the service of Walt Lenz and Debbie Woodward, who have long been friendly faces the entire time I've been on PSTA, and I see you here at meetings, see you at committee meetings, I see you at our events, and I know that your work and your service has really been a linchpin to PSTA activities and our success, and we're really going to miss both of you, so thank you. Our next meeting is July 26th here at 9 a.m., and we will adjourn today's meeting. Thank you. So Joe signs these.
Joe signs.
Okay.
He signed the minutes, but you have
Okay.
to sign these resolutions.
Okay.
There's 3 of each.
Okay.
You should, well, all of my staff knows that I'm running it last.